In this video, number 9, let's move away from Adobe Camera Raw just for a moment, give ourselves a little break from that, and take a look at Photoshop. If we were doing some cooking at home, we wouldn't get more ingredients or tools out of the cupboard than we actually needed. I feel Photoshop is a little bit like that sometimes because it displays lots of tools because it doesn't know exactly what tools and palettes are important to us. But the problem is, when we're new to the software, neither do we. Why don't we set up and save our own personal workspace that only has within it what tools we need now? Now, this idea has served me well for many years. Now, we do have a number of workspaces ready-made for us, and I've been scrolling through some of those while speaking. But they can only be Adobe's best guess of what we need. What I've found, and this is particularly relevant to 2023 and moving into 2024, as Adobe Camera Raw has evolved, which it has significantly, we amateur photographers need some of the tools here less and less. I could say some are becoming obsolete. We'll find the workspaces in Photoshop's main screen from this little icon at the top right. The good news for some may be that I've been using my own personal workspace, which I've called Barry's, for more years than I care to remember. In fact, I can't remember how long ago I first started using it, but my memory tells me almost my entire recollection of using Photoshop. That's a long time. I've never used any of these other options at all because what I want from any of those is easy to find anyway. For the moment, let's go back to Essentials because I think when you install Photoshop, Essentials is what normally appears first up. So let's go to that top right icon once again, and this time we'll choose New Workspace, and we need to give it a unique name, of course. I'll just call it my video tutorial, and I'm going to tick the boxes for keyboard shortcuts, menus and toolbars. We're not going to be touching those, but it's a good thing to just tick those and click Save. Now what I'm going to do is start to adjust this workspace because there's going to be tools in here that I don't think I'm ever going to use. The colour, for example, we've got that down at the bottom left in the toolbox. So I'll drag that out and I'll close it down. I don't ever use swatches, so I'll do the same. I do use gradients occasionally, but I certainly don't need them often enough to sit in that panel all the time, and the same goes for palettes. Now, before you start to worry that should you want any of these back, it's going to be difficult, it isn't. If we go to the Windows menu, everything you need is here. So if, for example, I pulled up swatches again, it'll appear here and I can just drop it into place wherever I want it. So it's pretty quick and easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out of here everything that I don't think I require. Certainly I don't require it sitting on screen all of the time. Now I was going to do that off camera to save a bit of time, but maybe we should do that live. So let me pull out the libraries. I'm going to get rid of those. Adjustments I don't want, properties I don't want the properties, and now you'll see that the layers have jumped to the top. It's very unusual that we're going to be using channels. I find I use them less and less these days. Paths or something else that can go. Maybe this option, which is the history, you may need that so you can slot that in, but the rest of these could all go. There's our personal workspace. Now, as you can see, the screen has suddenly changed because I've selected a completely different workspace just to be able to show you that when we go back to that option, we can go back to Video Tut and we're back to our own personal workspace. Now, in a previous video I have explained that I actually keep my raw images, the original images that I've shot, on their own drive, and all my finished images also on their own separate drive. And what we were viewing a few seconds ago was one of the folders in late 2023, which I believe is November, and there you can see the images. What I'd like to do is to just open one of these, and because this is a JPEG image, it's not a raw file, it'll open up directly into Photoshop. Now, I suspect that any photographer that's heard of Photoshop probably has heard of layers as well. Now, we're going to be looking at layers as and when we find a project that requires them, but there is one thing which is worth explaining first. Whenever we have an image opened in Photoshop, it's actually made up of two parts. It's almost like a physical print being mounted on a background. Now, in our case here, we call the background our canvas, but the image sits on top of the canvas. Now, if I remove this lock over on the right hand side, and all I need to do to remove it is just to click it, what I've just effectively done here is separate the image you can see from the canvas below. So with the Move tool selected, and you can see that is selected from the top of the toolbox way over on the left, I can now click and move the image and we can see the canvas. The canvas is shown to us in this blue and white checkerboard effect, and this is something we could change in the preferences, but I tend to stay with the blue and white because it's easy to see. But this area now is transparent, whereas the image isn't. And of course we can drop this back into position at any time because it'll snap to the edges. See those little pink guides that come up? They're all automatic and they're there to help. But of course, if we have the image separate to the canvas, it does mean that we can increase the canvas size and not the image, or we can reduce the image and not the canvas. Now, there's going to be some projects when we're going to need that, so let's take a quick look. Let's just adjust the image and leave the canvas alone. Once we've removed the lock, we can go to our Edit menu, and what we want here is Free Transform. A bounding box will appear around the outer edge. If I want to keep the image in register, meaning retain the width and height, the aspect ratio, then I can just drag any of these toggles. And I can move this up, and we'll even be assisted to put it in the center of the frame. As you can see, we could use this if we wanted to print an image with a border. We're on our way to achieving that. If I wanted to adjust the image and not retain the aspect ratio, well, I can always just touch the Shift key. But I don't think there's going to be many times we'd want to do that. Control Z, that universal undo key, is very good here. In fact, remember, Control Z will work with multiple presses. So for the sake of this video, I'd like to set my image back to where it started. So if I hit Control Z again and again and again, you can see all of the different stages that I took to demonstrate that revealing of the canvas. And of course, to commit any of these transformations, we need to click Done at the top of the screen, but here I'll click Cancel. Because if I wanted to increase the canvas and not the image, well, maybe I should just reduce the size of the image just for a moment. You can see I've selected the zoom. The zoom has a little plus in it. But if I touch the Alt key, or I go to the option at the top left of the screen, I can change it to a minus, and I can just drop it down a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is go to Image, Canvas Size. Now I'm not sure how much I want, so I'm going to guess this. I'm going to pick up inches. I'm going to say, give me 6 inches on the width and 6 inches on the height. Now remember, it's going to be apportioned 3 inches left and right, 3 inches top and bottom. That's what this little anchor is telling us at the moment. So when I click OK, there you can see it. Control 0 will fit the image on screen. So there we've got our image separated from our canvas. We can increase and decrease the canvas or the image. Now the video length is up to 10 minutes and I think it's time I considered bringing this to a close. A couple of little options just to finish off. I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layers. We've got a little plus sign because it creates a new blank layer. It'll always create the blank layer over the top of whatever layer you have selected. And as you can see here, it creates it completely transparent. I'm going to drag that down beneath the image. If I move over to my toolbox on the left and switch them around using this little arrow, I just want white as my foreground colour, and we can pick that or any other colour from the colour picker if we wish. Now we've got two options. We can use keyboard shortcuts, but I'm conscious that I'm hitting you with quite a number of those. So if we go to this option here on the toolbox, we've got a gradient tool, but we've also got a paint bucket tool. And if I just click into that area, well, you can see exactly what's happened on the right hand side. It's actually flooded the entire layer, but of course it really is now like a physical print, whereas we've got a white card and the image applied to it. If we wanted to save this, of course, we would save it as a JPEG, but we also, via the options in layers, get the opportunity to flatten the image. And it puts both of those layers together, and this could be saved as a JPEG, give it a different name to the original of course, and we're done. And at this point, I'll see you in the next video.